Boo Humbug is the 5th episode of the first season of Will and Grace. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And if you're just watching or listening to this randomly, this is only the 5th episode I've ever seen. This is my first time watching Will and Grace, and it wasn't a bad episode. I'm still not at the stage where I'm in love with the show, but it's still early days, and I am generally enjoying it. So I think with the previous episode, I started to go through things scene by scene. Once I'm obsessed with a TV series, I will do a much deeper analysis. But with this one, I didn't really feel inclined. I started making notes scene by scene, but in the end, I just ended up lumping my notes together so they were grouped by part of the narrative. And there are two main parts of the narrative. I'll talk about both of them in turn, but they both are about the fact that it's Halloween. And part of it focuses on Will and Grace, and part of it on Jack and Karen. Jack needs a Halloween partner because his partner dropped out, and he ends up convincing Karen, and they go as body and soul. And we get to see a little bit of the night, and well, Karen's not completely loving it. And Jack tells her, he says to her, "Nothing's going to harm you, not while I'm around." And immediately my heart started racing because my all-time favourite #1 film is Sweeney Todd. Now, bearing in mind, this was released in the late 90s before Tim Burton's film came out, so they're actually referencing the musical in this. But nevertheless, when Jack started singing that song, I was very, very happy. And then the drag queens are really taking a liking to Karen, and she's really loving all of this attention, and they help her find her drag name, which is Shushu Fontana, which I have to say, I don't know much about drag queens or drag queen names, but I liked the sound of it. I thought that was pretty brilliant. And then Jack's not loving the fact that Karen's getting all of the attention, and he's kind of pushed to the side, and then he meets somebody who is the Starsky to his Hutch. He is David Soul, as in body and soul, but David Soul, as in Hutch of Starsky and Hutch. And it was a nice moment. I did think they would do something else with that. I was kind of waiting for maybe one more scene with that. But nevertheless, I still enjoyed it. That was not too bad at all. Then we come to Will and Grace, neither of whom care about Halloween. They're just going to have a night in together. They're cooking food. And then Harlin arrives, and he needs to go and close a deal. He can't take his kids with him, so he drops them off with Will for Will to look after them. And they're dressed in pretty delightful costumes, kind of creepy looking costumes, but very effective. And all I could think about is how hot those children must have been, because they're under studio lighting, which in itself can be quite hot, and then they're wearing these costumes, and it just looked so sweaty. I'm assuming they had a lot of breaks and were able to breathe in between scenes, but it still felt very hot. And Will and Grace try and entertain them. They realise they don't have the right food for children, the right juice, the right videos, the right toys. So they figure, let's go trick-or-treating. And they go trick-or-treating in the building, and they get a bunch of candy, and then they go back to the apartment. And up until this point, I was kind of thinking, I love Halloween, I love the costumes, but I'm not really enjoying this part of the narrative. But it was absolutely worth it, because the scene that happens, the final scene with Will and Grace and the kids, is just wonderful. Because they've got all of the candy out, they're all sitting around together, and they're, I guess, arguing over who gets what candy. And somebody pulls a silly string can. I think it was the little boy pulled the can. And Will decided that he was going to silly string him in return. Well, threaten him with the silly string. And then the little girl and Grace are in the same position. And now he's just waiting for somebody to spray the silly string first. And then they all do, and it's just an absolute mess, and it's chaos, and it's a memory those children will have. Granted, they're spending Halloween with virtual strangers, but nevertheless, I think it was a really beautiful moment, really well executed, and Harlin came back just at the right moment as well, and it was really lovely to see, and I rather enjoyed it. And we end the episode with Will and Grace fighting over I think it was the jawbreaker or the gobstopper, and it made me a little nostalgic. I've only been trick-or-treating, I think, twice in my life, and obviously probably just under 2 decades ago was the last time, 15, 20 years ago, so I haven't trick-or-treated in a long time, but I do remember the funness of, it wasn't so much what we'd get trick-or-treating, it was more the mystery of, I wonder what we'll get, and then sorting it all out at the end of the night. Yeah, I only did it, I think, twice, but fond memories. I can see the appeal. I can really see the appeal. It's not a huge thing in the UK. Some people do it, but on the occasions where I've had sweets, nobody's turned up, so it's a bit of a shame. Nevertheless, yeah, it's a really good episode. I'm still not completely in love with the show, but we absolutely have potential for that to happen. It's still very well written. Personal highlights would have to be, well, obviously, Jack singing Sweeney Todd and Shushu Fontana. I loved that, but I loved Karen's enthusiasm and excitement as well. I thought that was really lovely. And the silly string battle. I thought that was beautifully executed. So, really good episode. Still enjoying the show. Not obsessed with it yet, but I think I'll get there. Boo Humbug is a pretty enjoyable episode of Will and Grace, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the next episode has in store.